Good morning,
Hi,
Peggy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Awesome. So it's a little bit after 9, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. It's going to be awesome to talk to all of you creatives and artists out there. We miss seeing you in the office, so we're glad that you're here today with us. So first, we're going to have Mike O'Connell, the SBDC Senior Director, talk just a minute. And then we're going to really open it up to some questions that you may have for Franklin and Peggy. We do ask that you stay muted throughout the webinar, just that way there's not a lot of background noise. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free just to drop it in the chat group, and then I will read those back as they come through. So with all that being said, I'm going to welcome Mike O'Connell.
Thanks, Becky. Appreciate you setting this up. First of all, I am very pleased today to have with us Mr. Franklin Taggart and Ms. Peggy Lyle, and they are going to probably do a better job of introducing themselves, but it's my privilege to have known them for years and years and years. Wonderful folks, a lot of skills as well as great hearts, and they've done a tremendous amount in the community for a long, long time. So I'm really happy to have them on to impart what they know and want to pass along. Quick blurb about the SBDC. We are here to help with free one-on-one consulting. We have plenty of availability. We've got 40 some odd consultants, including the two people that I just mentioned, that can help you out with a variety of issues. So we're happy to help with that, as far as, and additionally upcoming classes as well too. So we do street smart business education and connection to resources. And we're pretty pragmatic and pretty helpful to the entrepreneur, to the small business community. So with that, why don't we start with, if I could suggest, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and maybe while you're doing it, you could just give a lay of the, give a lay of the land and your opinion of where the creative industry, creative artists find themselves right now, so that we've got a kind of a starting point platform before we go on to questions, opportunities, challenges, etc. So Peggy, could I ask you to begin?
Sure. Well, my name is Peggy Lyle, and I am a creative consultant with the SBDC, as Mike mentioned. I've been doing that for quite a few years now. I also specialize in events and marketing. I work as a generalist to try to help people who really have some sort of creative industries endeavor, which spans a wide range, everything from your traditional artist to marketing, and I know Franklin does as well. My sort of take on what the status is right now. Well, I think much like the business community in general, it's kind of all over the map. There are plenty of people who have pivoted well, who maybe were already in a digital space and they're doing really gangbusters. Some of them haven't sold as much art as they are doing now. Other folks are struggling, and maybe they had a gig working job to help make them, make all their ends come together. And they are really struggling to pay rent. So it's everything from needing to, kind of tap into some of our communal resources, all the way to thriving in a digital environment. But I think overall, creatives, we tend to be a little more emotional, but we are also very resilient and creative. So I think that there's a lot of positives actually that are happening right now through all the negatives. Did I kind of cover every single scenario there?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you're good.
Ditto.
My name's Franklin Taggart, and most folks who know me in Northern Colorado probably know me more as a musician. I've been a musician for a really long time, but also for half of that really long time, I've also been working as a business consultant and coach. And the areas that I work in with the Larimer and Loveland Business Development Centers primarily are working with creative solopreneurs But I've been all over the map lately with people from a variety of businesses. And as I look at the names on this screen here, I see some of the folks here who aren't necessarily artists or authors or musicians, but they are here, I would guess, because they want to have some creative ideas for how to respond to what's going on in the world right now. My take on what's going on in the world right now is that we still don't know what's going on in the world right now, and we're basically in the moment trying to make decisions from day to day that make sense given the circumstances that we find ourselves in. It's really difficult to predict anything right now. The one thing that we can predict is that the folks who have been doing creative events like art shows and concerts and things like that are SOL for at least the summer, maybe even through the end of the year. So the creative people that I'm working with are faced with that the delivery channels that they are used to are not available. And so what we're looking at is, how do we develop new channels? How do we create and cultivate new relationships? How do we continue to maintain some kind of a presence in the marketplace when the marketplace isn't really there? So those are the questions that a lot of the folks that I'm working with are asking. And that's not just limited, again, to the artistic field. It's across the board. Everybody that I'm working with in every business and industry is faced with the same situation. The channels aren't as they were, and we have no idea of how they're going to show up from day to day. So we're just in a moment of having to be really attentive, present, and responsive to whatever shows up in the moment.
I just want to chime in. I definitely agree that it's also about potentially creating temporary models, because we don't know, are we going to go back to normal production, with events, with music venues, with human to human interactions. So it's tough to put in permanent components. The one nice thing is, if you weren't already in a digital space, you're now moving towards one.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. Thank you, guys. If thinking of our creatives as a business, and they think about their business, and I think you both mentioned that for many of them, it's coming from a multitude of sources. But now let's talk about the revenue side. You found your revenue under pressure. You've the event that you used to rely on for years and years, maybe it's canceled this summer. Can you talk to me a bit about alternate revenue generation and your view of how that's being addressed or not addressed?
Well, the one thing that I will say is that for the first time ever in the U.S., creative people have been authorized and allowed to take advantage of unemployment benefits. And for a lot of the folks that I've been working with, that has been something that they've been reluctant to do, but it's been necessary, and it has been helpful to several. It's not going to be a permanent fix, but it is a temporary stopgap measure to make sure that their bases are covered, their rent stays paid, and they keep food on the table.
I would also add too that many of them are eligible for relief funds. So lots of things that are not loans. Most of the creatives that I work with wouldn't qualify for a loan. They struggle there. They may have qualified for the PPE potentially, but most of them need unemployment, or they're going to look to some of the relief funds.
Yeah, in Fort Collins in particular, like a good example of a relief fund is the music district set one up for touring musicians, where they could get a grant of $1,000 to just cover some basics. And then,
actually, just to clarify, I just want to make sure that it's actually Bohemian Foundation.
Oh, okay.
that did the Northern Colorado Music Relief Fund. It's not actually the music district, but yes, it's about $1,000. There's also one on the state level. That's the Colorado Music Relief Fund. And that one is actually doing a huge fundraiser this Friday with a massive music lineup to try to raise funds. And that's going through Redline in Denver. And their musicians are also available to that one.
The other thing I'll mention is that Peggy's created a great resource on the website for the Creative District that has all of these different resources listed. You're staying pretty up to date with that, right, Peggy?
You know, I am, and it's really tough. That's one of the hard things. It was definitely a deluge of information, and trying to just keep up with ones that would open and close due to demand just constantly. So I've had a little bit of help, and we've got our website built out. So if anyone in the creative industry, and honestly, again, that includes creative businesses, arts and culture nonprofits, we have huge amounts of kind of recovery and helpful tools, grants, everything listed on our website, and I'll throw that into the chat.
Peggy,
Thanks, for the plug.
Yeah, I think Becky just did that, so thank you, and thank you for mentioning that, and thank you for bringing it up. I did want to quickly introduce Kat Rico has joined us. She is the director of the Loveland Business Development Center, and we obviously work very close together, and she's done a fantastic job representing Loveland entrepreneurs. So welcome, Kat. I don't want to put you on the spot. Any comments you would like to make?
No, just I guess the only thing that I'd like to say is that, you know, slowly as we see the Larimer County orders lifted and things like that, people are, and different organizations are looking at creative ways to be able to have gatherings that include supporting the artist community. Franklin, I don't know if you've already mentioned it, but I saw that you and Vi Wickham did a jam session on top of Dark Heart to, you know, bring some music and stuff over Memorial Day weekend. And that's one of those ways that you can be creative and still get yourself out there as an artist. And we're going to have to look at different options like that in the future. So it'll be interesting. I think our creative businesses are really going to kind of drive some of the interesting recovery tactics, because they're used to being adaptive. And I think that's what's going to be really cool to watch the creatives do their thing. So
yeah, there are a lot of things like that. Our concert on the roof got rained on, but
I didn't realize that.
Oh no!
Like, that was the one day of the year that we actually got like an inch of rain.
Darn it!
But people still showed up. It was wonderful to see people out in the parking lot with their umbrellas and everything like that. So,
yeah.
Well, and that's definitely one of the things that I find wonderful, is that we have to remember that arts and culture and music helps bring us all together during times like this. Helps us understand our kind of complex emotions and feel like we're one. And so hopefully that helps everyone remember the value of creative industries and what all of that brings to our quality of life. So then when we're thinking about investments, we're thinking about budget cuts, we're thinking about relief funds and things like that, we should value that, because we're using it to help motivate us to support business and frontline workers and everything else. So I'm hoping that brings more awareness to the value of creative industry.
Yeah.
There are a few things that I'll mention that I'm seeing people do that I think are really important right now. I just spoke with Abby Powell down at the Downtown Partnership in Loveland yesterday, and she said that they're getting ready to move most of the downtown restaurants, at least, out onto 4th Street and onto the avenues down there in the coming 2 weeks. So one of the opportunities that presents is some sidewalk channels for you to be active in. So if you are an artist, a crafter, a musician, if you're selling any kind of a creative product, it might be a good idea for you to work with one of the restaurants or with one of the downtown alliances to get out on the sidewalk and show your stuff. It's also a really good time to be outside as much as possible where you can be visible. If you are an artist, for example, one of the things that you can do is you can go and set up your easel outside somewhere where people can see you working. And that is always something that, increases your visibility. The main thing is that you've got to look for where the people are paying attention, and you've got to be there. No matter what business you're in, that's rule number one. Where are the people looking, and how can you get their attention in that moment? So if they're starting to gather in small groups out there on the sidewalks, well, be out there on the sidewalks. If they're still doing things online, do things online. But the visibility is still, job number one for every business. You've got to make sure that the people that need to see you are seeing you where they are looking.
Do you know if Fort Collins is doing that at all? As far as the restaurants, are they setting sections? They are setting sections outside.
They're
So
going to
that
be
was-
moving in. Actually, I forgot to mention, I'm also the director for the downtown Fort Collins Creative District. And here in downtown in particular, they're setting up what's called K-Rail or Jersey Barrier, which is the big concrete blocks. So we're going to be working with downtown organizations and trying to get us to be able to help create those outdoor spaces as a more artistic outlet, from painting those Jersey barriers to I was trying to engage some folks through CSU and some of our set builders and everything to help make the outdoor spaces feel more welcoming, because we potentially are going to have those, you know, at least all summer and into the early fall. But we too, downtown, will be kind of pulling out onto the streets, allowing kind of that retail and restaurant to spill outside of their doors.
And so for someone to set up, like Franklin was saying, to set up their easel somewhere, do you have to have specific license to do that? Do you have to check with the city?
Well, if you were gonna, I know at least in Fort Collins, if you were gonna try to vend somewhere, meaning you're exchanging money for your goods, you would have to. I mean, we do have rules about panhandling and some things like that, especially within our downtown core. Now, if you're just setting up, pardon me, if you're just setting up your easel and you're painting somewhere, I say just do that. And if someone tells you to move, then move. But if you're actually actively out trying to sell your wares, we do have the pop-up art carts that are a good outlet. That's through that's here in Fort Collins, and that's through the Art Lab. They have vending licenses, and they actually do that in Old Town Square. I'm also fairly certain that there will be some relaxing of some of those rules. At the same time, they don't want it to turn into kind of a free-for-all, especially if you're not operating in a safe manner. Because even if you're doing that, you need to remember that you need to have PPE. Do you have hand sanitizers? Are you asking people to congregate around a small thing that you're doing? Like, how are you providing safety too? So I think that some of that could get a little bit murky. But I think if you just want to show up with your easel, or if you want to sit in the park and play your guitar, as long as it's not amplified, do it until someone tells you to move.
Yeah, and when it comes to complying with any of those guidelines for personal protective equipment and things like that, make sure you're checking the Larimer County website. Make sure you're checking the city wherever you're doing it, because if you're in Loveland, it may be slightly different from Fort Collins or Wellington or Berthoud. So make sure you're checking with that that city's health authority, just to make sure you're in compliance. And then also
NOCO Recovers has all that.
That's where I was going with it. Yeah, we're on the same page there. So NOCO Recovers, if you're having problems finding any of your PPE, there's NOCO Recovers, which is also linked to NOCO Supply.
Supply.
Yeah, NOCO Supply that can help connect you to resources for, you know, if you need masks, or if you need additional gloves or hand sanitizer and things like that, and you want to purchase those things locally, so you can support other local businesses outside of the creative sphere. Those are also great websites to be able to find some of that information or find some of those supplies.
And also at NOCOSafetySupply.com, I've been pushing people who are creating, like if you're making masks that you're actually looking to sell to folks, if you're a distillery that's creating hand sanitizer, anything like that, you can actually register as a vendor. I know we have quite a few of our stores and some of our creatives that have pivoted in Fort Collins. And this is a resource for all of Northern Colorado. So we want to encourage Loveland and sure, we'll let Greeley in there. We'll have everybody kind of as a part of that. You can list that you're providing that supply.
The other thing that I would mention about playing out, or doing things out in public, one of the ways that you can get past the whole permitting and things like that is to work in partnership with other businesses. So there are restaurants that are going to be moving some of their operation out onto the sidewalk. Why don't you talk to the restaurant owner and see if you can paint while people are there? Or why don't you see if you can be there and just, whatever kind of creative work that you're doing, see if you can be a part of that effort. So I'm really a big fan of creating partnerships with businesses that you can support and they can support you. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of bypass the permit scheme, and especially in Fort Collins. Loveland really doesn't have much of one.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that's a great option. It's also helpful if you pick the right kinds of restaurants and stuff too. You might create a relationship that extends past this situation, something that where you're able to hang in their restaurant. Maybe you're a part of a special Friday night. Again, it helps those other people in our business community know that you have value and you are an entrepreneur as well. I also want to mention, I'm not sure if anyone on this call is like a crafter or we've been talking a lot about sort of painters and musicians, but you know, there's a lot of other creatives out there. If you are someone who's creating actual products, if you're a cottage industry, you know, look at the virtual farmers markets, look at ways to participate. The farmers market will be reopening. If you're looking at reopening your business and you're not really sure where you qualify, I know I just worked with the city of Fort Collins on their checklists for creative businesses and for arts and culture related organizations like museums and galleries and you know, concert venues, performance venues, trying to get people to recognize that they have to be included in some of these checklists on to reopen, because they might have different kinds of considerations. If you don't find yourself listed on the Larimer County website's checklists and spreadsheets, there's a very easy form that you can fill out to say, hey, I want to request a variance because this doesn't apply to me. So you want to know what to do. They don't know you're out there unless you email them and give them some information about what your operation looks like, and then they can figure out a way to help you reopen or re-engage with your audience.
The county also has a hotline set up, and I'll put this number in the chat. It's 970-498-5500. And if you have any questions as a business owner, as a creative about reopening, am I following the right guidelines by doing this? They can give you some guidance, and they can even kind of evaluate your plan that you have for reopening your business. And so as you're looking at some of these alternative ways to partner with the restaurants and stuff, make sure again that you're trying to seek out that information from those reliable sources.
Is there anybody that has any specific questions that they would like answered? You can just go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like. Terry, any questions? No?
Okay. I have a quick question. So Peggy and Franklin, forgive me if this already got asked. I know I stepped off for a minute, but when we talked about resources, you know, Peggy, you talked about the Music Relief Fund. Peggy has put up the Creative District site. Are there any other sites that you would recommend people use as a go-to? Yeah, I would definitely check this. I assume like your own municipality, so you get the latest info on reopening guidance and safer home guidance. Anything else that you would say, boy, this is something that would really be on my list to check?
Well, I'm very partial. I am completely biased, and I'll just put that out there. But our website really is very thorough. It has resources for, I mean, it is focused on Fort Collins in a way, but it does have lots of regional resources, Colorado resources. It refers you to great folks like Colorado Creative Industries, which is really the leader for all of our industry in the state. But what's interesting is everyone falls in a slightly different category. So I would recommend the NOCO Recovers page as well, because that's a great resource. That being said, some of the kind of creative industry resources that they have listed there, there's not a lot of explanation. So you have to go through and sort of weed through what's there in order to figure out if it applies to you. Where on the Creative District website, we have a page for arts and culture nonprofits, one for creative businesses, one for individual artists and gig workers. And then we have a whole nother page that's dedicated to art specific things. So if you're a crafter, we have some of the grants that we know or resources we know for crafters. If you're a filmmaker, if you're a photographer, if you are a blues musician, I mean, we kind of have everything listed there. Now, a lot of those, you know, some of those funds might only be able to give you $500. Other ones are going to give you training, and you're going to get training and free webinars. Other ones are going to help you with preparedness or learning how to pivot into like e-commerce. We have a great list of all of our e-learning videos, which includes Franklin did one for us all about how to start teaching online. We have a lot of resources, so I don't want to sound biased, but please go to our website because I think you can get to a lot of other places from there. And then again, NOCO recovers, and I think on the state level, the economic trade website, which is it Choose Colorado? Is that what
Choose Colorado.
ChooseColorado.com. And then Colorado Creative Industries. Those four, to me, kind of probably give you all that you really need to know. Because there's a lot of lists out there. There's lots of websites with lots of resources. And it's hard to filter through what really applies to you.
Okay, excellent. Franklin, how about your vantage point from that?
Well, there are a couple of things that I'll mention. First of all, I agree with Peggy that her website is the place to start for all of it. There's one national organization that I'll mention called Creative Capital that is one that is worth checking into because they also have a national resource list that's available that you can look into, particularly for various types of genre specific things, like or medium specific things. I think that the other thing that I'll mention is that right now we're coming into the beginning of the grant cycle for 2021 for nonprofits, for artists, organizations, for things like that. What's really funny is that we've gotten so wrapped up around the crisis funding and all of that, that a lot of folks aren't paying attention to the fact that they've got to get their grants in. So that's one of the other things that I think is really important. There's some funds that are available that are regular, everyday funds that are available every year, and those grant cycles are just starting to, the application cycles are just starting right now. So I would encourage people to remember that those things need to be paid attention to as well. Not only do you have to be focused on getting through this time period, but you also have to start thinking now about next year for arts organizations in particular.
Well, and there are quite a few of them that potentially collaborate across channels. There's one called Arts and Society that the Colorado Creative Industries has, that and Bohemian has quite a few. The music events, they have community events. Again, I agree with you, Franklin, that there's a plethora of grants, and if we are just focused on the recovery grants, which a lot of those get tapped out, a lot of those can't accept any more applications, and but there's all this other money that potentially you could tap into. Most of those you do have to be a 501c3 to apply for, but you also, as an artist or creative, you might be able to partner with a 501c3. Like Arts and Society, you're able to partner with, they actually want a non-arts applicant. So a lot of times that might be a health organization, that might be a service organization. You can look at all the folks that are listed at United Way. Oh, that would be another website. I would say go to the Larimer County United Way website. If you need help with rent, there's Neighbor to Neighbor. There you can call 211. There's all kinds of personal resources that you can get there, food, everything. But you can partner for Arts and Society with an organization. So as a creative, think creatively. How can you tap into some of these things so that you can potentially have funds for a project you're looking at? Right now, there are also grants that are even about telling the story of COVID. You know, like for lots of people, how are you helping to interpret what's going on? There are grants looking for that kind of content as we move forward. And to Franklin's point, the applications are right now. If people need help with grant writing too, we've worked with the library to create a whole pool of people who are qualified grant writers that you can engage. So if you don't know how to write grants, but you're looking at doing one, there are resources to help you.
Thank you, guys. I did want to just chat for a minute about one big asset that came out of the CARES Act that Franklin mentioned, and that's the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA component. You know, we've all heard of unemployment insurance, and for decades and decades, that was really only accessible to W-2 employees that got laid off from an employer. But when the CARES Act came down at the end of March, an additional component of that was the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, where not only laid off W-2 employees can get unemployment benefits, but it's also been expanded. So for the first time ever, creatives, solopreneurs, 1099ers, self-employed people can file for unemployment insurance. And it's run through the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. I will put up that website in the chat for just a second, but when you go to that website, it's going to ask you a couple of questions, and then it directs you to file either for regular unemployment or for the pandemic unemployment assistance. And I will say that that system has been pretty overwhelmed. I think we've got something like 400,000 Coloradoans that have filed for one employment or the other, but a significant proportion of those people have been the freelancers and 1099ers who are applying for this now. So that really is something that we're encouraging people to be aware of and apply for, because I would say that a while back we were having people ask, are we better off getting a PPP loan, or are we better off getting pandemic unemployment insurance? And in the vast majority of the cases, you're better off filing for unemployment insurance, because number one, it's not a loan. So just wanted people to be aware of that comment, and I will put that in the site.
That's great to mention, and I would actually recommend too that you watch, and we have a link to this on our website, but the Colorado Office for Film, Video, and Television, or Television, Film, Video, I'm not sure what order it is. They have done a really great series of webinars, and they do one that's all about unemployment insurance. And so they talk about pandemic insurance. It is a little bit complicated, especially a lot of folks who are 1099ers might have a W-2 as well. If you have a W-2 that you need to file under, but you really, most of your loss is in 1099s, you have to actually go through the payment that is structured around your W-2 first until you get through that period, and then you can start getting the money that is really based on your 1099 work. So it's a little bit complicated for gig workers, but it's definitely a great resource, and it's helping a lot of people get through. But I would recommend you go watch that video. Again, it's through the Colorado Office of Film, Television, and Video, or Film, Television, and something else. Anyway, Franklin, what were you going to say?
Well, there are a couple of things that I was going to mention. Mike's earlier question about how people are generating revenue is something that I wanted to address, because we really didn't get a chance to talk about that much. There are a lot of really cool things that I'm seeing happen with creative ideas for revenue generation. And one of them is virtual events. And those are starting to pop up everywhere, of course. But there are some that are really innovative, in my opinion, and they actually will probably become a part of the kind of normal way of doing things from here on out, because they have been so successful. And what I'm starting to see is, like, an example of this is the event that Julie Suter did a couple of weeks ago. That was, she just got a whole bunch of different people from around Fort Collins together. They raised $10,000 for, I can't remember the organization. Do you remember, Peggy?
Yeah, it was for neighbor. I was one of the answers.
Neighbor.
It was for neighbor to neighbor.
So in any case, that kind of event is a really important thing. It doesn't have to be a fundraiser in order to be successful. Another example that I've seen is that I've got a friend who's a kind of a famous self-help author. And one of the things that he's done is to offer some really nice low-cost book club things, where he goes through books that he's written or books that have been influential for him, charges like $17 a person, and he gets a couple hundred people to sign up, and it's an event that happens over the course of a few weeks, and it's done really well for him. Well, what's happened is that that's also fed some of his other programs. So like an example that I can think of that might be interesting is that if you are a fiction writer in a genre, maybe one of the things that you could do is to create an online event that is for people who read and write in that genre, and just have like a short story festival. You can do that online. You could even do it, you could do it probably through public access TV at this point, and make it happen. But the thing that's really interesting is like the people that I'm seeing who are starting to create these little side events are starting to see some really good possibilities. Another good example of that is the one that Sarah Slayton's done here in Fort Collins, the online concert series. And is it every Sunday that she does it? And it's like she hires the people ahead of time, and she knows what the lineup's going to be. They all perform from their home spaces, and it's all of the most well-known musicians in the area. And it's a consistent weekly festival.
It's called it's called the NoCo Live from Home Show.
Yeah.
And she has Northern Colorado musicians play. It's every Saturday.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, every Saturday, and she's been doing it now for several months. And you can live stream all of it, and then she encourages folks. They're all remotely live streaming, so you kind of watch a whole day's lineup, and then all those folks can be donated to through their Patreon, through their if you want to send the money through Venmo or Square or whatever. So it's actually kind of an honor system where you're paying for a live concert.
That's a really,
so cool.
I think that's one of the best things that I've seen online so far. Another example that I've seen that I really thought was a cool situation was Billy Colson from Independence Gallery in Loveland. Every Saturday morning is doing a live art demo on Facebook Live, and just as a way for her to stay in front of people. And her sales have done pretty well through all of this, and she's actually been able to keep the gallery open through most of the quarantine because she's only inviting one person at a time in. They have to make an appointment to come in, but doing things by appointment only and having the sanitation rules followed and the masks and all of that has allowed her to keep her doors open and to keep some sales going. So,
and that's a more committed environment. So you're probably more committed to buying art when you're in there as well. You've made more effort.
Exactly. So those are some things that I'm seeing that I'm very encouraged by. And I think that they could be duplicated and replicated across the board by a lot of other people. But I think it's one of those times where we have to say, let's find ways to gather people safely and gather people around the interests that we share. And let the interests then be the foundation for the promotions that we make and the offers that we make. And I feel like that's always an opportunity, whether we're in a pandemic or not. But right now, that's the way that we have to think. How can we create safe gatherings where we're talking about the things that we are, sharing an interest in and promoting those interests with each other?
I would also encourage people to just be really human out there. You don't have to be a downer all the time but you want to be human. So if you're a weaver and you're, talking about your passion and you're talking about how this is getting you through, that's going to connect with somebody who also is wanting that, and you're able to have that genuine customer connection. And then I think really I've seen lots of great people or great success for people selling on Instagram, where they're literally just saying, hey, I'm doing this cooking class for $5, or I'm selling these, I've been knitting, and like, here's a resource that I actually know people need. All of the little bands that people can use in the health industry to wear their masks. They're kind of just a little band with buttons on them. I was just talking to a doctor who was like, I wish more people were making these. Those are little things that you could offer potentially through your social media, through your own networks. To Franklin's point, if you're in small groups, you can offer those things and you can figure out how to get some sales and how to get some revenue and do some pivoting maybe of what you thought your model looked like. You need to right now think a little differently and think about what are those products that people need. And if we think about it in a really human way, you're going to be able to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then of course, if you're making something like that, get it on NoCo Supply as another plug for that. So I actually have a question related to the virtual events. So virtual events can be hard for a single, I see them as being potentially difficult for a single creative person to be able to execute. So what are some of the tactics that our creatives can use so that if they do want to host a virtual event, they're not spinning their wheels and getting 2 people that are signing up for it? That they're really making a good impact with that virtual event and they're really getting some engagement with it. What are some of the hard tactics they can actually use?
Collaboration first. The more people that you have involved in collaborating on the event itself, the wider your audience is automatically, because everybody who comes to the table in the collaboration has their own audience. So one of the things that I would say is that this is the point where you might want to reach out to other people who would be competitors, colleagues, peers, whatever, and just say that we have an opportunity here. Let's work on this together, and I'll bring my people, you bring your people, and we'll have a great time. I think that that's where I would start, especially if you're just a solopreneur.
And I agree. I think you should also be thinking about how do you want to support the businesses that you love, because those businesses in town are struggling too. So potentially reaching out to that partner who has the bricks and mortar, who you could they can bring an audience. It's a good influencer in your area, but you're also showing your support for them because they need you as well. I think that's a great idea, is make sure you're collaborating. I also think pick the right platform. Where is your audience? Are they on Instagram? Are they watching Instagram Live? Are they on Facebook? Are they more traditional and they want to be in a Zoom environment like this? I mean, traditional, but what's the right environment for your people? What do they want to get out of it? Do you need to have interaction? Or are you simply just broadcasting, right? There's a real difference in kind of how you want to do it. I did throw into the chat the list of virtual event resources and live streaming resources that we have kind of put together, and look at those different platforms and say which ones make the most sense for me. But really it's kind of marketing as usual in a way. Where's your customer? What's their problem? What's your solution? And then pick the right way to connect with them. And maybe it is like your example, Franklin, it's more about an intimate actual interaction where it's a one-on-one, or what are the regulations for, how many people can get together? Is that the number that really wants to get together for you? Do people want to operate in family pods or in quarantine pods, where they're all quarantining together and then they're coming and engaging in your work? Do they want to be in a class? I think it's really just being thoughtful about it and not necessarily rushing to a platform just because that's what you heard everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing I would add is that the example that I'll use is the concert that we did on Sunday, even though we got rained out. The thing that I'll point to on that is that Vi was kind of the idea guy with that one, and Vi Wickham at the Gressy Wick here in Loveland. But what Vi did was he contacted the different musicians that would be available and willing to participate. He contacted all of the businesses that are attached to that parking lot down in downtown Loveland that was kind of the venue area. And so he talked to Dark Heart Coffee, and he talked to Rear of the Steer, and he talked to, I think he talked to Origins Pizza. And all of them had different things going on where they were doing special offers for the event. Curbside still, but it was still, they were available, they were visible, and people were there. And then there were several of the places downtown that were offering some, to-go drink specials and things like that for the people who were down there. And then all of the galleries downtown were doing what was called the Yart Sale. Now, the Yart Sale is just where all of the artists in the community bring the art that they haven't been able to sell for years, and they just put it up for sale. It's kind of like a garage sale, but with just art. And all of the galleries in downtown Loveland participated in that this weekend. So those kinds of collaborations are still very possible, both live and virtually. So the thing that I would look at is, first of all, it needs to be something that's not too generic. It needs to be something that is kind of a specially focused event. And the name that Vi gave the festival on Sunday was the Quarantunes Festival. And the whole idea was that it was a way to enjoy music together, live music, and be socially distanced. That specific focus allowed him to, be very targeted in his marketing. And even in the middle of pouring rain, we still had people showing up. We ended up having to move it into an open garage downstairs where people could stand across the way and listen, but the rooftop ended up not being feasible. But that kind of an example is one that I would use. It's like it was a nice collaboration between people in the community that brought all of their audiences together. And together, it was a successful event, even in spite of the rain.
Thank you. Peggy, you mentioned platforms, and Franklin, I heard you mention someone that was doing Facebook Live. Peggy, you talked about Instagram. What surprises have you gotten about technology during this process? Have you made any new friends? Did you get discouraged with something? What's been your experiences with that?
Well, I would definitely say go on YouTube and watch some tutorials about how to do some stuff, how to upload it correctly, or what platforms. The thing that is tough, I won't lie, is that every platform is a little different. So like for instance, if you're going to shoot video for Instagram, you need to shoot with your phone like this. If you're going to shoot on Facebook, you should shoot it like this. If you're going to put it on Venmo, you should put it, there's all these different things, bit rates. I mean, so pick your platform and then research it and get it out there. I would also say too, determine, do you want to give this away for free? Mm-hmm. Is this are you considering this a promotional or a marketing expense? Or do you need to insert a paywall? Like if you're looking at paywalls, the one that I've seen that has been most successful for video is Vimeo. Mm-hmm. So Vimeo, do you have a bigger corporate partner that you work with, right? Do you have, like, for instance, I work with one of the dance studios here in town, and they actually have a larger POS provider, and that POS provider also helps them with their scheduling and everything else. Well, they worked with Vimeo, and now they have this really great package. So look at some of your current providers too, and do they have a relationship? If you don't know how to design things, I would say my best friend that comes into play all the time is Canva. If you don't know canva.com, it's a great way for you to make quick, easy graphics for any kind of business. It automatically saves it. You can literally tell it, I want to make an Instagram story, and it already has a completely designed. You don't have to know what size it is. You don't have to know what pixels it is, and you can quickly use it. So I would say Canva is my best friend, but I would say research your platform before you start doing things.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. The surprises that I've had is that anybody can learn how to use Zoom. It's been really interesting to see the folks who have been intimidated by online technology, and they get invited to a Zoom call, and all of a sudden it's like their eyes light up because they never thought they could do this. And I think that that's one of the surprises that I've seen. The other thing that I think is really important is, besides the platform to think about, is you mentioned the paywall, and where do you start asking for money, and where do you draw the line for free? And one of the things that I work with people on is, what is the content that you're going to put out there that's to draw people in, and what is the content that is meant to be your bread and butter? Don't give away your bread and butter. Give away the stuff that is going to lead to your bread and butter. And the way that I look at that is that, you can share your knowledge in 62,000 different ways. You can package your knowledge in video. You can package it in blogs. You can package it in podcasts. You can package it in a whole number of different styles and consumption methods. But the thing that I think is really important is for you to draw the line and say, where does the money have to come in? Like, where do you have to start charging for what you do? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's an important question to answer. You can share your knowledge all day long, but it has to lead somewhere. And that's one of the things that I work with people on. There are a couple of things that I also want to mention. There are several people on the call here today, and I want to mention to the three of you who haven't heard about this before. At the very beginning of this whole pandemic thing, Kat and Ben McConnell and Peggy, I don't know, were you in on this one with the e-commerce?
I helped kind of put it together with you guys. I wasn't on the video though.
I just
You
want to
guys
mention
were
that
talking.
video is still out there and it's still extraordinarily useful about how to get
It is
started
on our website.
with e-commerce, because I still think that there's an opportunity for people to make sales right now, and you just need to learn the way to do that, and that's a really good place to start. So you have a link to that on the Creative District
Yep,
website.
and I'll share it right now actually because I've got it.
Awesome.
And Nick Armstrong was on that as well too.
That's right.
Participant.
So those are the things that I would put out there. It's like when you are trying to get something started online, my first rule is make it collaborative. My second rule is keep it simple.
Well, and I would also say too, go to the professionals. If you're not good at writing, there are plenty of writers that are out there that need a little work. They potentially won't work for, a lot of money. Hire somebody. If you need video production, find somebody, figure out a way to make it happen. Because I will say this too, if you're putting out just like any time, but because now we have more limited channels to consume things from people, if you're putting out a subpar product, that's reflecting on your business. And that might be the only time that someone engages with you. So they just learned that you aren't really worth investigating. So think about the quality of product that you're putting out there. I know we just worked with FC Public Media on a whole little series of just 1-minute videos to help you up your game on learning how to do home video production. So be considerate about the quality you're putting out, but also don't be afraid to engage professionals in all these areas to help you, because that's what they're there for. If you need a really good logo or a graphic, reach out to a graphic artist. Again, everyone right now, we're one big community. If you need help with any of your business stuff, make sure you have an appointment with the SBDC. Like that's what
Absolutely.
all of these consultants are here for. I can't praise the SBDC enough. I think it's an amazing resource that everyone should think of outside of just a government loan. Like it is an amazing place. So I think just be thoughtful and look at who can help you get to your goal.
Mm-hmm. I see some of the names on here of people that I've worked with on marketing, and the things that we're talking about here, setting up an appointment with one of our consultants would be a really great place to start. So I'm going to encourage you all to do that. I think that would be a great thing.
I am going to link in the chat here. I'm going to link our page from lovelandbusiness.com that's got some recovery learning resources, because it's got links to the different parts, whether it's you're wanting to look at your cash flow, you're wanting to generate more online sales, you're looking at some marketing techniques. Those are all kind of broken out, as well as our different coffee chats from the last several weeks and everything. So I think that's a great resource. Peggy, I love what you said about engaging professionals to help you with some of that content creation. I think that that's really important. It can do a lot to build your confidence as you're putting content out online, because maybe you engage a professional for the first couple of videos or things that you're doing online, but you learn from them as that process is going. And then the next time you can put something out, it'll be a little bit better. And maybe you don't have to pay the professional to do it every single time. You just do it for your keys, kind of pieces that you're trying to get out there.
I would also encourage people. I've had quite a few clients that have thanked me on the back end to say, oh, I'm so glad I just started getting in front of the camera. Yes. Or I'm so glad I just started Instagram. So you're going to mess up. Like, be ready. You're going to not do it as perfectly as you want. You're not going to learn unless you try. So you really do need to go out there. If you think your business needs to be on Instagram, start a personal account first. Get out there and just start practicing. Figure out how it works. The whole point and opportunity of right now is we have the opportunity to learn. So let's learn new ways of being. And I think all of that stuff will just reap you rewards as you move forward. We just kind of have a bigger jolt of having to do it all right now. Yeah. And it can also be overwhelming. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to call people. It's okay to have more human connections sometimes too. It can be exhausting sometimes, having sort of virtual fatigue. That's a real thing, but just kind of pace yourself and really maybe do some thoughtful thinking about what your goals are first before you launch into, you know, a huge marketing effort.
Yeah, what I would also add to that is that, you know, all of these different professionals that we're talking about here, if you schedule an appointment with the SBDC consultant, we have lists of different content creators that can help you in those professional areas. So we have referral ability in that way. Adding to the conversation about getting good ideas for marketing and for different platforms. I have on my computer what I call a swipe file, and I actually keep it in my Google Drive so that I can access it from every device that I have. A swipe file is simply if I see somebody who's done something really exceptional in their marketing, I make a copy of it and I put it in that file. And I can go back and I can refer to it. Like if I see a video that is extraordinarily well done and I want to borrow from that style or from that video, the way that they produced it, the way that they structured it, the way that they scripted it, I'm going to keep a copy of that. And I would encourage you to have that kind of mindset as you go about learning the platforms that you're on. Look at people who do Instagram really well and take a screenshot of what they've done and save it into your swipe file and then go back and refer to that later. It's a very common practice for marketers and copywriters and advertisers to look at really high quality examples of effective marketing and advertising and just educate yourself with that. Create a swipe file and just fill it with really good quality content.
Agreed. Yeah, learn from best practices. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with sort of sampling. You don't want to pirate somebody's stuff, but sample from the greats. I mean, that's how we all learn. So you can have some virtual mentors in a way.
Folks, we are at the end of our time, but I did want to say a huge thank you to, first of all, Becky Dothert for setting this up, along with Kat Rico and Terry Donovan Kearns, but in particular to Franklin Taggart and to Peggy Lyle for sharing your expertise and your industry knowledge and your love of all things creative. So thank you for being here. And as both of you mentioned, this help is accessible through the SBDC, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning.
Now go set an appointment.
Please reach out to both of us. Please reach out to both of us. You know, we're here to help. We want to make sure everyone kind of gets through this storm together.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
Thanks
day.
all. It's good to see y'all.
Bye. Nice to see you.